started in Epping after a 38-year-old Ethiopian man was charged with sexual assault.
Tommy Robinson's resurgence is somewhat based upon people's acceptance that there is a statistical anomaly when it comes to Pakistani rape gangs, and some confusion about why an inquiry was not undertaken earlier.
They had allowed a rape of a generation of England's daughters in order to not be deemed racist. When people want to talk about political correctness and understand how powerful it is, it paralysed an entire nation's police force from protecting kids and allowing systematic abuse, torture, and even murder.
Where is the passion coming for you to want to go up and do something about this?
Tommy's smart, though. I knew he had a story to tell that only he could tell.
If all these people had been doing their jobs, it wouldn't matter what Tommy Robinson had or had not said.
And I watched as parents stood outside the school, and the jihadists have got their children in the school, and I can still see the mothers falling on their knees, because as they started slaughtering the kids, the mums dropped to their knees. What is this? This isn't one mad man. This is a whole group of mad men. What is making these men do this act?
But who is for you now?
I have to say thank you to Elon Musk, because without X, if we didn't have X, everyone would just think I lied.
Now you can take me to court.
When I went to court, they said delete the film and we reduce your sentence. That's when I was in court. I'm not deleting the film. It's not getting deleted. Send me to jail, I'll go to jail, come out of jail. The Attorney General gives my solicitor the notification. If the film's still up when I walk out of jail, I go straight back to prison. I would be indefinitely prisoned. Indefinitely.
Could you just give us just a quick high level on what that documentary, I know because I've watched it, but I want everybody to watch that, and how they f***ed you in the media with that?
We need to stop pretending we've got a justice system. With regards to this film, there was a story in the north of England, and when you see this film, the question you need to ask is, how many other things have you been lied to about?
Last night, Tommy Robinson was walking alone in a large train station in London when he was threatened with violence by a belligerent man who was drunk.
How big is this problem? Is it just that one town, or is it across the nation? How deep does this rabbit hole go?
First of all, Adam, don't kid yourself, it's just the UK. This is happening right now in Australia, I guarantee you.
Guys, welcome to this very special episode of Unemployable. Today, we are joined by easily our most controversial guest in the history of the podcast. His name is Tommy Robinson. The next hour or so is probably the biggest wake-up call all Australians and New Zealanders will have about the future of our country. Now, I will warn you, some of the content in this video is extremely intense. I don't know that I would recommend it for kids to listen to. This is an adult's discussion, and it's extremely confronting. With that said, if you enjoy this content or you have a view, please feel free to share your comment below. The best thing you can do for this kind of content is subscribe and share the content so that we can get more eyeballs on this kind of material. Tell your friends if you believe in what's being said here to get this message out. I'm going to leave the rest to the podcast itself. It was extraordinary. Tommy Robinson, thank you so much for joining us on the pod, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Back in the fight, raring to go.
You seem to be, mate, you've been at it. Look, I think a really great place to start for our audience is you're very famous in the UK and throughout the US and really the Northern Hemisphere. But in Australia, a lot of Australians have never heard of Tommy Robinson. So how would you just give us the context about who you are, where you grew up, why you talk about what you talk about, and have been on, you know, this global mission? Like, just give us the background for people who've never heard of you.
I'm a working class English lad from a town called Luton, which is 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, Luton had one mosque. It now has 45. I've watched the troubles that come with the explosion in the demographic of an Islamic population. Just to make it clear, that's not to say that every Muslim is bad. It's not to say there's not some great, wonderful people within the Islamic community. What it is to say is that the more Islam is, the less freedom. And what we see, and what I've witnessed with my own eyes, is the way the council, the police, the authorities, the establishment, everyone surrenders to Islam and to mob rule. The Islamic community are hostile. There's an aggression about them that other communities don't have. Luton, everyone in Luton are the sons of immigrants, pretty much. It's a very diverse town. Yeah? White English are a minority within the town. But per se, when you've come from somewhere like that, when you've had immigration from Jamaica, Ireland, Poland, Italy, St. Lucia, you can see and tell the story of how it does work and how it doesn't work. Now, what works is all the other communities pretty much integrated and assimilated. If you line my friends up, we're all the sons of immigrants and we all love each other. But one community within the town segregated itself and there was zero assimilation. And it's the Islamic community. And it's not racist to say that. It's not extreme to say that. I'm just pointing out the reality of Islamic ghettos that have now been created in every town and city. And it's partly our own government's fault because they actually encouraged it. They said that all cultures are equal when they're not. They encourage these inward-looking communities to not integrate, not assimilate, no attempt really. And when you have the explosion of immigration that we had, there hasn't even really been an opportunity. You've got Muslims. There's been many interviews of Muslims in my hometown of Luton who said they've never met a non-Muslim. So they've grown up within an Islamic community. They don't come out of the Islamic community and they don't meet anyone other than Muslims within the Islamic community. And then you couple that. So what people need to understand, what I saw growing up, even if I just go back to my school days, when you went to my school, you had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground, not the white and black, just so people understand. Whites and blacks are not divided in the UK, partly because all of our black immigration has come from Christian nations. We get on great. So in Luton, whites and blacks were like this. Yeah, everyone was like this. We had the Windrush generation. And there may have been some teething problems in the early days, but not for my generation. For my generation, we grew up loving each other and as friends and integrated and assimilated well. The problem was the Islamic community. So you had the Muslim playground, the non-Muslim playground. If there was a problem with a Muslim at school who got in a fight with a non-Muslim, 20 of them would jump one person. It was something that I'd never seen. So when we grew up, there were fights. Luton, so people can understand as well, Luton is rated the roughest town in Britain. It's a very poverty-stricken town with a high level of violence and criminality. So there's lots of problems in Luton. Even if you take Islam out, there's lots of problems. It's a very poor town. But growing up, I noticed something very different. I didn't really understand it. I just knew the Pakistani community was different. Now, many people across the world have now heard of grooming. I don't know why we call it grooming. It's jihad. It's where gangs of Islamic men target non-Muslim children. The majority, of course, are white, because the majority of young girls they're targeting in England were white girls. But they also target Sikh girls, black girls. They target Hindu girls. They target non-Muslims. They take those non-Muslim girls. They befriend them. They give them money. They buy them drugs. They buy them alcohol. They buy them cigarettes. And these girls go through a process which our government labelled as grooming, where they get them into a position where in the end they are ganged by sometimes 10 men at a time, queues of men. There's been instances of queues of men outside doors going in one by one to rape the dirty gura, because that's what, if you go through the court cases like we have, the girls are called filthy white bitches, scum, kuffar. It's religious, it's racial, and it's targeted. And the problem is that what I saw growing up in Luton, in 2009, I started an organisation called the English Defence League. Yeah, the English Defence League was formed of young working class men who had had enough. And it started in Luton and it spread like a phenomenon across the whole of the UK. Literally within 6 months, we had divisions, we called them divisions, in every single town and city. Now, we were young. I went from working on a building site to 6 months later leading the biggest protest movement Europe has seen. We were young, we were male, we were unhappy, and I guess you could say at times we were aggressive. And the reason being, we'd seen a total failure of government and police to deal with any problems that come from the Islamic community. They smash our community with iron fists and they treat theirs with kid gloves. They're scared of them. And that's what we'd seen growing up. We'd seen all these problems, started an organisation, it grew. But what I realised then, when I started travelling the UK, My cousin was a victim of these grooming gangs at 14 years old. She was kidnapped. She was taken for days. She was raped. Now, for your listeners to understand, because this is going to sound unbelievable, literally, young children from the age of 11, 12, 13, they were taken for days, sometimes weeks. The families would ring the police. Our daughter's missing. The Muslim community have got her. She's being raped. And the police would take no action. And it wasn't just that they wouldn't take action. They actually conspired. Now, when I started talking about this, I first started talking in 2004. I held my first demonstration in Luton, but I didn't form an organisation till 2009 because I'd seen so many problems. And in the end, for us, enough was enough. We then made the rape of our daughters an international news story from 2009. When 10,000 young men, English men, were charging through cities, screaming about our kids being raped and our daughters and our nieces and our families being targeted, it could not be ignored anymore. And what that developed into was government inquiries. You may have heard of Rotherham. I don't know if you have, Adam.
I have, yep.
Rotherham's a small town in the north of England with a 3.7% Muslim population. There was a government study. It didn't happen until 2015. So that your viewers can understand. When I started talking about this, it was unheard of. Yeah? The government and the police, the authorities, there'd been a conspiracy of silence between police leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, all of them had conspired to hide this crime. They had allowed a rape of a generation of England's daughters in order to not be deemed racist. When people want to talk about political correctness and understand how powerful it is, it paralysed an entire nation's police force from protecting kids and allowing systematic abuse, torture, and even murder. So in Rotherham, there was a report in 2015 that came out that identified 1,400 children had been raped at the hands of these gangs. Now, when the report came out, they found that the police knew, the community leaders knew, high-ranking politicians knew, but they were all too scared of letting it out because of community tensions. They didn't want to let the world know or the public know that young white girls were being raped and kidnapped. And so this, obviously, my trajectory has taken me. I started off on a street protest, and there were problems with the English Defence League. There were problems because there was anger. We were angry. We went on the streets, and when we went on the streets, gangs of young Muslims come out and tried to beat us down. And our slogan at the time was death, prison or glory, we will not submit. Obviously, Islam, I don't know how much your supporters know about Islam. Islam is a very different to the other faiths. Islam translated means submit. We've always said we're not going to submit. You will not beat us into silence. And in those first few years with the English Defence League, I was targeted by the establishment, by the police, by terrorists. 6 Muslims were caught with guns, bombs, suicide vests on the way to kill us. There was a massive effort to crush a voice that was created for the English working class. And unfortunately, again, I don't know, in Australia, you may not have the class system that we have in the UK. The class system in the UK, all journalists are from middle-class backgrounds, highly educated, all went to the same schools, and then you have the working class, and we're supposed to just sit down and shut up. But with regards to mass immigration, it's affected us, not them. It's in our cities, not theirs. It's our communities that Somalians and Pakistanis and Afghanis and Iraqis and Syrians have been thrown into our towns and cities, and it's our communities and our daughters that are being targeted. So that's a brief little background into who I am. I've had, if you Google my name, you'll see lots of negative stories about me. Of course, when you're trying to raise concerns about something that goes so deep in the establishment cover-up, then they will take every effort they can to destroy, discredit, slander, and defame that voice.
Tommy, for the listeners who don't know, if you read Wikipedia on Tommy, you'll see one hell of a hit job account. If you've ever seen it, this guy's gone to prison a number of times for what he believes in. But I just want to talk quickly about how big this problem is, because it's just not that one town. This is a problem across the entire UK, right? These grooming gangs that have been going on. Can you sort of speak to how big a problem that infiltration is? And then I want to talk to you about some of the way you've been treated, because Australians, I think, are just starting to now see it. with the protests that are happening around the wall. We saw in front of Sydney Opera House, they had, pro-Palestine protests that were happening. And one guy or one girl turns up with the Jewish flag, and the police cart the guy off with the Jewish flag who's just standing there while the Palestinians are throwing flares and the pro-Palestinian supporters are. So it's really interesting just to see the difference in the way those are policed. And we'll talk about that separately. But maybe you could, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Talk about the scale of this problem in the UK. Like, how big is this problem? Is it just that one town? Or is it across the nation? How deep does this rabbit hole go?
First of all, Adam, don't kid yourself. It's just the UK. This is happening right now in Australia. I guarantee you. Okay. Probably still in cover-up mode. It's happening in every Western European nation. You see, in the UK, it's predominantly Pakistanis. In Holland, they made a film called Loverboy in 2007. It was an educational film directed at children, to educate the children in Holland that the Moroccans were doing exactly the same. I guess in your country it'll be the Lebanese that are doing it, yeah. But so people understand the scale of the problem. I spoke to you about Rotherham. Rotherham has a 3.7% Muslim population. That's not many. My hometown has over 50% Muslim population. Yeah, so you can only imagine the scale of the problem. If 1,400 children have been raped from a 3.7% Muslim population, what do you think it's like in other cities like Oldham, Bradford, Birmingham, and Luton? We've never been given the figures of these other cities with the predominantly Muslim communities. The other figures we've been given is a town called Telford. In Telford has a 1.7% Muslim population. Telford has 1,000 victims, children, identified by the police. 5 have been murdered, set on fire, burned alive, tortured, killed. 5 separate females are dead in the town of Telford. Now, from that 1.7% Muslim population, what I did is I made a 5-part series so far called The Rape of Britain. Again, just to explain to your viewers, I was a street activist. I mobilised young men and hit the streets in towns and cities from 2009 to 2014. In 2014, I left the organisation I founded called the English Defence League, and I left because I thought that we've took it far enough with a street presence. Remember, this is before these, really, yeah? The way you spoke to people was to galvanise 5 or 10,000 on the street and stand and talk to them. What I then realised by 2014 is journalism is the answer. I need the public and the country and the world to see what I've seen. I need to educate them on what's happening in these towns and cities. Is the best way to do that with 10,000 men marching into a Muslim area? Probably not. Okay, we've woke the nation up. We've brought issues to the forefront. I then went into journalism. I was employed by a company in Canada called Rebel Media, and I exploded as a journalist. I become the most watched journalist in Europe in that first 6-month period because I was covering stories that no one else would cover. I was going to mosques where I knew they were radical. I was walking into the mosques and asking the questions that no journalist has asked, the questions that they should be asking. I was looking at the funding, looking at the extremism, looking at the statistics, the numbers, giving the public the information that's been hidden from them for so long. So when the scandal blew up in 2015, and it blew up in 2015 because a journalist called Andrew Norfolk run the Rotherham scandal in the national newspapers. Now, from Andrew Norfolk's own words, he knew about these gangs for years, but was too scared to report on them. Yeah, Andrew Norfolk won all these awards for highlighting this. He knew about them, but then he saw the emergence of the far right. Of course, if you highlight any of these issues, you're far right. Yeah, so he saw the emergence of the far right, and he wanted to take it back from the far right. So we forced him to do his job. He was a coward. He had no courage, and he wouldn't talk about the issue. When he saw us highlighting the issue, he decided to report it. Now, when he reported on it, obviously it struck that the country was shocked. And all of a sudden, people were going back to videos I made in 2009 on interview shows. I sat on big news shows in the UK getting told I was a liar, fear-mongering, exaggerating. And all of a sudden, people look racist. All of a sudden, people look back. And those videos have aged well for me, not for the hosts or the media. Because we were just telling them they're raping our kids in every town and city. But no one wanted to listen. 2015, now people want to listen. So what I did is I decided to make a 5-part series we've got one more episode we're going to do called the of Britain in Telford. And the reason I chose Telford was because there's no Muslims there. I say no Muslims. There's a population of 3,500. And we know from that 3,500 Muslim community, 1.7% of the town, we know that they've raped 1,000 children. The police investigation identified 200 men. Again, think of this. Yeah, everyone listening, you have to think about the numbers here. So from a population, we've got 1,000 victims. We've got 200 men identified by the police investigation. What I did is I spent 18 months in that town. And I sat down with a dozen, 18 girls and survivors of these gangs. And I sat them down and I interviewed them for 3 hours, 4 hours, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. And we built a database. And each time the men were named, we put them into a spreadsheet. I ended up getting 264 names of perpetrators in that town. I ended up knowing everything. The Benali's, that's the gang's name in the town that we're in. We built a database. We done a police investigation ourselves where we showed who they were, who was linked to who. Some were in the Crown Prosecution Service, some were police officers, some were councillors for the Labour Party. The way they're interwebbed, it's like a Pakistani mafia. Yeah. So we done our investigation. We identified 264. An independent inquiry identified 300. So just from that Islamic community, when you take away the women, the under 16s and the over 70s, and you get down to the men that actually fit the age criteria that have been involved in these rapes, there's only 1,000 men in that town. That means 20 to 30% that we've identified. Remember, there's 1,000 victims. I only sat down with 18. So out of 18, I got 264 names. But there's 1,000 victims. So if you look at that, we're looking at 20 to 30% of the male Muslim population of that town were raping kids, our kids. And then we find out, again, in an inquiry, an independent inquiry, we find out that the police, the council knew they were doing it and let them do it. So when we're talking about the scale of the problem, and you have to understand, this isn't about sexual gratification. This is not just about sexual gratification. In a Telford inquiry, our investigation, we speak to a girl who they took up to the woods. They would urinate all over her face and then they'd all rape her. This wasn't just about their gratification. This was about the destruction of something we hold sacred, our daughters. When you go through, and I've done it with all the cases, what they said to the girls, it was religious, it was extreme, it was racial. In the town of Oxford, so this is Telford, small population, Rotherham, small population. When you think of Oxford, what do you think of when you hear Oxford? University?
University.
The best university in the world. You don't think of that anymore, mate. Think of it as a place where English girls are raped and tortured in a house opposite the mosque. I've done videos on this. One girl, they heated up an iron rod with the letter M. They heated it up and they scalded her bum at 12 years old because she was the property of Muhammad. They took another girl and they nailed her tongue to a table. They took other girls and doused petrol of them. And what you have to really to understand what's happened in our country. Whilst they're doing this, the police know, and they're doing nothing. No arrests. And if you look, I've drew a graph. The arrests are like this. It's a straight line, yeah? 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009. The English Defence League forms. By 2010, 2011, the arrests start going through the roof. They couldn't hide it anymore. They can no longer hide it. In corridors of power, behind closed doors, they listened and they knew the country's about to blow here. Yeah. And what I was shocked at, what I'd seen in Luton, I then realised every town and city I went to, it was happening. I went to Blackpool. Again, in Blackpool, just so people understand, a young girl called Charlene Downs was groomed at a Muslim takeaway. She went missing. When she went missing, the mother goes into the takeaway to ask if they've seen her because she knew they used to hang around at this takeaway. Now, the police put covert recordings and cameras and listening devices in the takeaway. What they get is they get the men saying that they put her body in the kebab mincer and they got rid of her. Yeah. So her bone, you can hear the conversation. The men were prosecuted. They got off on a technicality. They got off with this case. Even though there were recordings, they got off. They just changed the name of their shop in Blackpool's a tourist destination where English families go on holiday. So they renamed their shop and carried on running the same business. That girl's parents and family have never had justice. No one's ever been prosecuted. The Muslim men that killed her were given £250,000 compensation. Now, I could pick a story like this for any town and city in the UK. What has now become apparent is that there's 64 cities where the police have now made criminal arrests for the way these gangs are operating. In the UK, Muslim men make up 3% of the population. Yeah, 3%. They are responsible for 84% of the convictions of gang-related men that target and rape young children. 30% of the men convicted are called Mohammed. Now, these are facts. People may not like facts. This might hurt your feelings. You may have some people looking, listening, saying, oh my God, yeah, well, the truth hurts. And if you want to identify and solve these problems and stop the biggest stain on, this is the darkest stain on Britain's history. This will be remembered as a time that men were invited into our nation from hostile nations, and they raped and pillaged through our towns and cities at the full, and the council, the governments and the police let them do it. Now they've started making arrests. Again, you see in the city of Telford, where they identified 200 men, the police identified 200 rapists, they prosecuted 11. Only 11 were prosecuted. The other 189 rapists, nothing happened. So our 5-part series, if anyone wants to watch this, go to trfilms.co.uk. You can watch all my documentaries. These documentaries are explosive. We go after the gangs. When the men are named by 3 girls that do not know each other, I go and find those men. I walk into their businesses, I go to their properties, and I let everyone know who they are. And for that, again, I've had my cars blown up. I've had my family targeted. I've had Osman warnings, government warnings, police warnings, telling me I have to leave my home. I have to leave my town. The police cannot keep me safe. And at the same time, whilst facing that, again, when you start highlighting these problems, terrorism, jihad, gangs, I expected the Islamic community to target me. I expected to face violence on the streets. I faced a lot of violence. I expected all these things. What I didn't expect, I was very naive. I thought we lived in a free democratic society. I thought Britain was the beacon of freedom and democracy. I wasn't ready for the full weight of the British establishment to come crushing down, not just on me, but targeting my family in the most extreme ways. As you've said, I've been in prison multiple times for my work, for my journalism. I've just come out of jail 2 months ago. I spent 7 months on solitary confinement because I made a film. I made a film that exposed government corruption, judiciary corruption. We need to understand, and many Australians need to understand, it's going to be the same in your country. We in Britain live under a totalitarian state. The media are a weapon of the state. The judiciary is a weapon of the state. It's a facade. We live in a post-free speech era across the whole of Europe. There's no free speech. There's no free speech. So that's a brief. So that's just to give the scale of the problem to the viewer to understand this is not exaggerated. In fact, I can't even begin to try and make you understand how many victims there are, how many crimes have been committed. Again, I'll give you another one. When I was talking about Blackpool, where the young girl was murdered and put in a kebab mincer, I met a father there whose daughter was taken. The Muslim rapist used to ring the father. He'd put the phone on the side and he'd make him listen as the Muslim rapist and his own father were raping the child. That's his daughter. Can you imagine what that's like? And again, that's what I mean. This is not about just gratification. This is religiously targeting. And again, people don't want to. The question you've not been allowed to ask, which I keep asking, and I've delved into, is why? Why do the Sikh community not do this? Why do the Filipinos not do this? How come the Hindus are not raping like this? How come every other community that's come to the UK is not kidnapping, torturing, and targeting young girls? Why is it the Islamic community? Why are they so misrepresented and overrepresented in the figures? You're not allowed to ask that question, because if you ask that question, it starts exposing flaws in our immigration policy. It starts exposing government failure. Governments know. For example, Afghanistan. 99% of Muslims in Afghanistan want Sharia law. What are the laws under Sharia law? Under Sharia law, Muslim men, when at war, can take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. There's 4 verses in the Quran. One of the verses actually says they're blameless. Outside of your 4 wives, you can take whatever your right arm possesses. You can take the kafar women as slaves. That's why Boko Haram done it. That's why ISIS done it. That's why Al Qaeda done it. They're not making it up. The Prophet Muhammad did it. Now and unless you understand that, you're never going to tackle it. But when you try to have this conversation, I've been shut down. I was censored, deplatformed. I had every single social media shut down from me. It's only recently.
Literally imprisoned, literally put in solitary confinement, literally abused.
I've spent 2 years.
Assaulted, 2 years in solitary confinement. You used to have time in the US, the UK. What I want to just make a couple of things. I want to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, I just want to make a distinction that there are good Somali, Lebanese, Pakistanis in all countries, right? It's not, and good Muslim people in all countries. There needs to be a distinction there because
the distinction is very clear because some of the best people I've met growing up in Luton, as I said, 50% of the town's Muslim.
Yeah.
So the best people I've met growing up would identify as Muslim. But if I go through their lives, I've got friends, and when I say to them about their lives, I said, but you're not living as Muhammad is. You're not taking the literal interpretation of what the book says. The people who are 4 times as many British Muslims, 4 times as many Muslims in Britain joined ISIS than have ever joined our British military. 4 times as many went to fight for ISIS. In Britain, we have 40,000 Muslims on the terror watch list. 3,000 of those Muslims are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at a cost of £9 billion a year. Now, when you look at the Muslim demographic, so I talk a lot about Islam, and because we have to, because Islam used to be a small demographic, but every 10 years, it's literally doubling in our population. Now, when you have a 3% or a 2% population, because in the Islamic community, 48% of them are unemployed. 16 to 64-year-old Muslims, they're unemployed. They don't work. So the state is funding them. Now, if that's a 3% population, okay. But when that becomes 20%, the whole system breaks. Yeah. Pakistani men make up 3% of the UK population. They're responsible for 33% of the child defects. Because in the city of Bradford, disabled children, 33% of disabled children come from a population of 3%. So all of these sort of flaws and all of these problems, and they come because 76% of Pakistanis in Bradford marry their own cousins. Why do they do that? Because the Prophet Muhammad did it. Now, when you add up all of these problems that come, we have 2/3 of British Muslims said they would not report on another Muslim who was getting involved in terrorism or jihad. That's a massive problem. 2/3. As I've already said, 40,000 on a terror watch list. Well, when that doubles in 10 years, that's an army. In fact, that's more than the British Army. So are we going to sit and sleepwalk into our own oblivion? Are we going to wait until we cannot afford to monitor these communities? You have to understand that out of that 3,000 that are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all of our last jihad attacks, Salman Abedi blowing up Ariana Grande concert, Westminster Bridge, all of these attacks were by people that weren't in the top 3,000. How big is the problem?
Also, Tommy, it's not just that, because I've watched you in other interviews say how that it's now infiltrated politics and policing, and you yourself had to report to a Muslim officer to get access with your daughter to the Christmas lights parade. What chance have you got as a British citizen in the policing system when the police are Muslim, the government, is that part of the problem as well? They're afraid, but they also are running things. Is that the case there?
We've just elected 5 independent MPs who are pro-jihad. 5 MPs now sit in Parliament. 5 right now.
So they're actually pro-jihad?
Pro-jihad. They're elected in their support of Hamas, basically.
Because that flicked the switch. That was what flicked the switch for you, right? Maybe you could just share, like, just going back to where when you were walking around your town and seeing, you know, people being recruited to fight against your own soldiers in a jihad.
So what flicked the switch for me was the Beslam school massacre. Do you remember it? Mm-hmm. How old are you, Adam?
I'm 51.
You look good for 51, mate.
Thank you, mate.
So the Beslam school massacre happened in Chechnya, Russia, and what happened was lots of jihadists took over a school, and I was young. I can remember it, because I hadn't delved it. I knew the Pakistanis were problematic at school. I didn't know much about Islam. I just knew that community were very different, hostile, violent, heroin dealing, gangs, something very different to everyone else. Then the Beslem school massacre happened. And I watched as parents stood outside the school, and the jihadists have got their children in the school. And I can still see the mothers falling on their knees, because as they started slaughtering the kids, the mums dropped to their knees. And I remember watching it thinking, what is this? This isn't one mad man. This is a whole group of madmen. Yeah. What is making these men do this act? And then I saw, literally 2 weeks later, a group in Luton, my hometown, in a chicken shop in the town centre, on camera, saying that an attack like Beslem would be justified in an English school. And I watched it, and I looked at this man, I thought, who the fuck is he? Excuse my French. Who is he? And I looked him up, and his name was Saif al-Islam. Now, that translates as Sword of Islam. And I looked up the group they were representative of, and it was called Al-Mujahideen. And I looked up where their head office was. And then I realised that Al-Mujahideen, as I started going down this rabbit hole, they were a global terror network. And their head office for a global terror network, this is Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza, you remember with the hook, all the country's most feared terrorists, well, their head office was in my town, in Luton, in Biscuit Mill, a housing estate. And I looked and thought, what the fuck? Yeah. So then I looked at the group, and I saw that every Saturday, they're outside Don Miller's. Don Miller's is a bakery chain in our town centre. So I went down to observe, and I went down to watch, and I saw the leaflets, and they were literally recruiting people on the streets of Luton, all bearded mullahs with their paste tables set up, with all their flags, all their banners for jihad, and they were recruiting people to send them to Iraq, Afghanistan, to fight against British troops. And there was a police officer there, and I walked up to the police officer. I said, what the fuck is this? Tell me what this is. And she was a black police officer. And she said, it's free speech. I said, yeah, we'll see. I said, let's see if it's free speech then. I said, you know what I'm going to do? And I'll just be honest. As a young man, I was involved in Luton's football hooligan scene. Yeah, football. So it may seem a mad culture to many people. Yeah, I was always tribal. I'm tribal about my school, tribal about my area, tribal about my town, and tribal about my country.
It's that time of year again at Unemployable, where we're opening up our Unemployable business coaching program. It's over a 12-month period, and with that, you get private one-on-one coaching, group coaching, as well as private and live events throughout the year. You could get private coaching with me, and not only me, but our panel of experts that we have put together. These panel of experts have been in our network and are the exact people that we use in our business successes. People from branding, sales, marketing, our lawyers, our accountants, everyone that has helped build our businesses, you have access to. If this sounds of interest, go to www.unemployable.com.au/coaching and register your interest to see if it's a fit for you and us. Hope to see you there.
Yeah, I love all of those things. Part of being from Luton is part of my identity. And as I grew up, my uncles were founding members of Luton's football hooligan element. Luton's football hooligan group was called the Men in Gear, the MIGs, Luton's MIGs. And on a Saturday, you'd get a large group of men coming together at football who would fight men from other towns at football. It may sound moronic. I'm 42. I think it's pretty moronic now. Yeah. But when I was a young man, I didn't. I loved and thrived off of the adrenaline of representing my club and my town and having a fight. And you don't just, some people understand it's not just attacking ordinary supporters. Men would meet and they'd willingly fight each other. Yeah. No weapons, just punch ups. But that's what it was. But I then got together 200 young English men on a Saturday and said, we're going for this lot. Yeah. They're not in our town centre. This is our town centre. Now, you have to understand as well that every time Luton has ever been in the headlines or the news, it's called a terrorist hotspot. It's to do with negative stories about our town, to do with Islamic radicals, jihad, terrorism, etc. So that pisses us off. And in 2004, I got a group together and we went to target them. Now, when we got down there, they weren't there. They didn't turn up. They knew. I let everyone know around the town we're coming on Saturday. Yeah, the police knew. The police shut down the whole town centre. Luton were playing a team called Peterborough. I'd reached out to Peterborough's men and said, on Saturday, we're going for the terrorists. Yeah, we're not going for you. We're going for the terrorists. They're in our town centre. We've had enough of them. And this, remember, this is 2004. This is before any 7/7 terrorist attack. This is before there'd been terrorism on our shores. Yeah. So people weren't aware of who these groups were. These groups are all now prescribed terrorist organizations. They weren't at this time. They were given free rein to recruit, to radicalize, to promote. Now, 60% of Muslims in British prisons for terrorism are ex-members of this group. If the government would have tackled this group a decade before, we wouldn't have maybe faced many of the problems our country faced. But they didn't tackle them. They actually gave them a stronghold because it benefited our foreign policy to have a strong mujahideen in fighting in Afghanistan against Russia. So in the 80s, 90s, we allowed it. Our government policy was to give them a safe haven in Britain. We let them recruit, we let them radicalize because we wanted mujahideen fighters against Russia. So that's what's going on in our town. But whilst they're letting them do that, where do they think the explosion of hostility towards Kafar and non-Muslims is happening? It's happening in streets like ours. We're being the target, and we didn't understand it at the time because I hadn't gone down the rabbit hole of Islam or jihad. So then 2004, I organised a demonstration. I stand up in my town hall, in my town centre, and I made leaflets. And my rhetoric, so people understand, has never changed since I was 20 years old. In the leaflets, it said whites and blacks are being religiously and racially targeted in this town. Muslim gangs, there was a gang, and I named the gang. They're called the Gambinos. Not very original, are they? They can't even name themselves, yeah? They're called the bloody Gambinos. Pakistanis called the Gambinos, yeah? And in 2004, I organised this demonstration. Now, fast forward to 2007, the national newspapers then do big stories on the Gambino gang, how they're linked with funding terrorism, how they use heroin as a chemical jihad. Well, this is what we've known because we've grown up in the town. But in 2004, when I named them, the front page of our local newspaper took my leaflet and put it on the front page. And I named the shops. I said, how come the police aren't stopping them? How come they're smashing us? How come they're not smashing the terrorists? And I basically said, we've had enough in the town. We're not tolerating him anymore. Now, what happened to me from that point? Now, luckily, on a Saturday, we as young men, as Englishmen, could get 100 men if we wanted to. We're the only group that could because we went to football together. And we sort of formed a resistance in those years against the Pakistani heroin dealing gangs to say enough's enough. With the girls, if they were targeting girls, we'd fight back against it. Fast forward from 2004 to 2009, by the time 2009 comes, I couldn't go out in those years in town without being in a group. So if I was going out to pubs, clubs, as a young 20-year-old man, I'd go out with 30, 40 lads because we had to, because all the Pakistani mobs wanted to get me. Everyone wanted to get me from that point. So fast forward to 2009, things have calmed down in the town. By 2009, I've got 2 successful businesses and bought 7 properties. I've moved my family out of Luton, like most people. When you made a few quid, get out of Luton. Yeah. So I could have hid from the problem. But then there's a soldiers' homecoming parade, and the same group targeted the soldiers. They spat in their families. They spat in the families' faces. Hundreds of them attacked our soldiers in Luton. And at that point again, I said, enough's enough. Like we cannot let this happen in our town. Again, it was about it being our town. We have to resist this. That gave the birth of the English Defence League. That's what started the English Defence League. And it started from, again, groups of young men who go football coming together and saying enough's enough. Yeah. And that developed, that spread on. And again, I left that 2014, went into journalism. I've started making documentaries, making films. I'm going to plug myself here. I've wrote 4 books that have all gone to #1 on Amazon, which must be pretty discrediting for the journalists who like to just call me a football hooligan. I'm a best-selling author, a best-selling filmmaker. My film that I was recently in prison for had 167 million views. It's the most watched documentary in British history. But these books, so if you're in Australia and you're watching this, I hope if you're based in Australia, wake the fuck up, right? You need to form a resistance now. You do not understand how much your politicians will surrender and bow, because as the Islamic community gets so strong politically, you have to understand that they vote like a military vote bank. It's like a military fashion. In Luton, the leader of the Council of Mosques, we used to have 19. I'm going back to 2014. When we had the English Defence League, there was 19 mosques. The leader of the Council of Mosques does a deal with the Labour Party, and they guarantee them 40,000 votes. You can't do that. As non-Muslims, we are not like that. We have no thing that brings us together in that similar fashion. So in Luton, the non-Muslim community don't matter anymore. The Labour Party know that to gain power in these towns and cities, they just surrender to the Islamic community. What do you want? We'll give you it. What do you need? We'll give you it. We'll ignore that crime. We'll ignore this. They give land for mosques for 50p. Yeah, all part of these corrupt deals to gain power. So if you're in Australia, I've wrote 4 books, 2 autobiographies, 1 on Islam, and 1 to understand what's happening and how it's happening. Because you need to get ready. And it's not racist. It's not extreme. Do not think it is. If you do not stand up now for your country, your culture, and your community, it's going to disappear like minded. Luton's never coming back. Luton's a 50% Muslim community, 45 mosques, Pakistani gangs out of control, police have surrendered, council have surrendered. Luton is a blueprint for every town and city in the UK. And that's in Australia now. It's happening now. It's growing now. You need to stop it. We need to address these issues. And as I said on Patrick McDavid, I wish someone come and warn me. I wish someone come to my town 30 years ago and said, listen, get yourself organised, lads, because you need to protect your kids. You need to protect your women. And the acceleration of demographical replacement across all Western nations, including Australia, if you look at the growth of the Islamic community, it's the future. Your politicians will know. Yeah.
This is where you need strong men, right? And,
well, they feminise everyone, don't they?
They feminise them. You need strong men. And I want to just change track here just quickly, because I watched your documentary Silenced, and Elon Musk gave you a leg up there, with having the only at-scale free speech platform left, which is X. I don't even know if this video is going to survive long on YouTube. We'll see. But, that documentary absolutely floored me when I saw the corruption in the media and why free speech is so important. Like in Australia recently, they tried to bring in a hate speech law that gave basically the government the power to determine if something was hate speech and to protect us from it. Yeah. And then they could just basically be the arbiter of truth. And your documentary, as you said, Silenced, was seen 167 billion times, I think you said, and the most viewed documentary in British history. Could you just give us just a quick high level on what that documentary, I know because I've watched it, but I want everybody to watch that, and how they fucked you in the media with that?
So I have to be careful here because I'm on a lifetime injunction. Now, what I just got 18 months for was for playing the film. I made that decision. I knew I'd go to jail, but I also knew gentlemen like yourselves around the world would see the corruption, because we need to stop pretending we've got a justice system. We have a legal system, not a justice system. It's not about justice. You go through my Wikipedia page and read all my convictions. I've never been tried by a jury. I've never had a jury, not once. I've never had a jury. Now, how is that right? How have I not been tried by members of my peers? I've always been tried by an elected judge. Yeah? So with regards to this film, there was a story in the north of England. And when you see this film, the question you need to ask is, how many other things you've been lied to about? Now, I managed to put together the evidence to expose the judge lied, the court lied, the council lied. The council didn't just lie. What they did, there was a story in the north of England. There was a story, I need to think about what I could say and can't say. There was a story in the north of England where an incident happened, and the incident was fed to the public as a racist incident, and they portrayed the total opposite of how the situation was. Yeah.
Can I say what it was, or just you can't?
Yeah, I can't. I can't, and I can't.
All right. Well, I'll let people watch it, because what you're saying is exactly right. There's an incident that occurred that was portrayed in the media one way, and in this doco, Tommy shows you what actually happened. And if you've got an Australian boy or a Kiwi boy, and you are worried about them being misrepresented and fucked over to the highest level possible, you have to watch this.
And what was amazing to me is when I went to the school, so I knew the story was a lie because I'd spoke to families and people at the school, and I saw this story go global. It didn't just go on UK news. It was on ABC. Is ABC in America? What's your one?
We got ABC. Yeah, we got ABC in Australia.
ABC in Australia. It went CNN. It went Israeli news. It went Chinese news. It was taken and pumped around that whole globe. And then I found out that it wasn't organic, that the incident happened 6 weeks prior, and that it was planned. They behind the scenes planned this global news story in order to push an agenda of open border migration, of sympathy for refugees, when the total opposite was the story. And then I went to teachers' houses and I wore a covert camera. And again, I thought I need the public to know what I know. When I knocked on the teachers' doors, the first teacher comes out, Asian teacher, and just says, "Tommy, I took the money." "What do you mean you took the money?" He said, "They paid us." I said, "Who paid you?" "The council." So you look at who leads the council. And it was a Muslim gentleman. And his brother was the lead imam who was organising the protests over the same thing. But they spent £274,000. I knocked at all the teachers' doors, got the truth out of them on camera, but then got them all saying they've been paid not to tell the truth. I produced all this to the courts. When I produced all this in court and showed the judge, this whole story was a fucking lie. Yeah? What they did is they took me through the courts. They sued me. And they said that I lied. So I produced all the evidence that I didn't lie. Here's the school records. Here's what happened. Here's everything. Now, that put the judge in a very difficult position. But what they've done is the judge gave an injunction that no one was allowed to know what happened in court. Yeah? So he gagged me. And he gagged everyone. He ruled against all of the covert recordings. He ruled against 7 witnesses in court. He ruled against all of it. And the reason being that the whole purpose of this case was to bankrupt me. He bankrupted me for £1.5 million. And then he gave me an injunction that I'm not allowed to tell the public or show the public any of the evidence. Now, that ate me up for 3 years. Everything I've done, if you follow my life and my journey, I've always said if you worry about consequence, you'll never bring about change. So if I would have worried about consequence, I wouldn't have spoke about Islam, would I? I wouldn't have confronted Islam. The first time terrorists were put in jail for 30 years for planning to kill me, I'd have run off and hid. The first punch in the nose, I'd have stopped. But I've always took the thing like, just keep going, keep going, keep going. Now, I'd spent, just before this film, I got put in solitary confinement in 2018 for reporting on Islamic rape gangs. When I went into jail, went in one person, I come out another. That sentence of solitary confinement seriously damaged me. And then,
you saw some shit in there, right? Some horrible shit going on with the Muslim gangs in there.
Yeah, with the Muslim gangs, and not. But I was in total isolation, so I was kept on my own. I couldn't eat properly. I had 5 tins of tuna a week, and I was held on total solitary confinement. So no one to talk to, no one to see for months. Now that may sound, it doesn't sound. I wouldn't think it's that bad. And at the time, I thought I was all right. But when I come out of jail, it hit me like a brick wall. I was a mess, and it took me years. I started then binging, drinking. My life changed. Who I was changed, totally changed. So fast forward, and it took me years to get myself into a position. I found the gym, and it took me years to find my get out. I don't believe in medication. I don't believe in antidepressants. I don't believe in any of that. I just think fitness, health, nature. So I didn't. Fast forward to they give me this injunction. And it's the first time I worried about consequence, and I bottled it. And I had a film that I knew exposed them, and I didn't play it. I should have walked straight out of court and played the film. But when you look at the way things work in the end, it couldn't have worked out better. So for a couple of years, I sat on the film, and it ate me up. And I wasn't well. It damaged me, and I knew what I should have done, but I was too scared. And the truth being, I was scared. I was scared of prison. I could get killed in prison. I don't know what I'm walking into. Whether that be that or not, I could get 2 years in jail, 2 years of solitary confinement is going to break my mind. I know it is. I know what it's like. I know what I've done last time. I only done 3.5 months the time before. But then I sat my family down and explained that I have to do this. I have to play this film. Now, I had a thought that if they come for me, I thought they're thick if they come for me for the film. Because at the time, the film was leaked in America, and that's when they wrote me a letter saying they're going to prosecute me, or they're contemplating prosecuting me. And when I got the letter, I made a video to the Attorney General who was contemplating prosecuting me. I basically said, fuck you. Yeah. I believe in free speech and I believe in freedom of the press. And I'm laying down the gauntlet to you. Yeah. You want to get me? Come and get me. You're going to bring the world's eyes on that film. And then I organised a demonstration. And remember, I've been taken off all platforms. Elon Musk gives me back my X account at the same time. Yeah. So I think, right. And I was living in Spain. And I think, right, the fight's on. We're back. We've got a voice again. They've censored us for 5 years. The most important work I did was when I was under total censorship. The most important work that gives a voice to the most important victims, my Rape of Britain exposés, lots of my documentaries. I got given back my ex and just thought the gloves were off. Let's go. I went straight back to the UK. October 7th just happened. Jihad, Hamas across all the Western nations, Australia. They're on the streets. They're promoting hate. So I come back and organise a demonstration in London, and then the Attorney General wrote saying, right, we're and do you know how I knew? So the film had been leaked on a channel in America called Mice Media, and there was a YouTube channel in the UK. Mice Media had 1 million views. The UK channel had 200,000 views. Both these people contacted me and said the video was deleted today. So I rang my solicitor. I said they're coming for me. They've got rid of the video. So what they're thinking is they delete the video. Now they're going to put me in jail. No one's going to know what I'm in jail for. They're going to tell the country I lied again. Yeah. So then I organised a demonstration in central London. We had 100,000 people there, and that's when I played the film. And I said, right, I'm playing the film now. Now you can put me in jail. I'm doing it myself. Yeah, it's not been leaked because it had been leaked. This is me to 100,000 people. We had 880,000 people watching live online. So I played the film, and they come for me. But at the same time, I had this hope that if they come for me, the world. All I wanted was key people like Elon Musk. Just watch the film. The film proves the total corruption of the judiciary. It proves the weaponisation of the courts. Now, why is this important? Because the courts have not just been weaponised against me. Look what they've done to Donald Trump. Look what they've done to Steve Bannon. Look at Alex Jones, hit for £1 billion. Katie Hopkins, an activist in the UK, they took her home. Gert Wilders, they put him through the courts. Marie Le Pen now, they've used the courts again against her. So the courts are being used as a weapon. And I've got this bomb. I've got the ammunition that shows how they do it. I've got all the covert recordings. I show who does it. So I played the film, and then they come for me. I was in prison for 18 months. I spent 7 months on solitary confinement in the prison system. And as I said, I got out 2 months ago. But what they did was they brought it to a global attention. So yeah, it was shit, and I knew it would be shit. But at the same time, it was mission completed. Total success. As far as, remember, no, I've gone through so much that the breakdown of my marriage, the breakdown of my family, everything has come from the consequences of standing up and saying what I say. So there's not much more they can do. Yeah, I've been in the prison system, so I sort of like threw the gauntlet down. Hoped the world would watch it. They did. They have brought more people, and that film awoke more people to understand the corruption of the judiciary, the weaponisation of the media, how I call it the unholy alliance, how they all cooperate and operate together. Far left groups, Islamic groups, media groups, politicians, all of them work together to control the narrative. I'm talking about Islam. Doesn't matter if we're talking about Islam or transgenderism. It doesn't matter if you're talking about vaccines. They'll crush you. Yeah, free speech is dead. There is none. So you only understand that when you start trying to have the discussions about anything that goes against the globalist narrative.
Yeah. And this is what I really want people our listeners in Australia to understand, because it's a beautiful, great country, but it's starting to see these problems, and many of these patterns are starting to happen in Australia, which is really alarming. And for those who haven't seen it, the video is called Silenced. I suspect a lot of Australians haven't seen it. That's the one that we're talking about. It's an amazing documentary. I would highly recommend watching it, because, as Tommy said, it really exposes it very plainly. And it did exactly that for me, Tommy, where I just went, what else have I been lied to about?
Do you know what? It acted as a gateway. I had loads of people emailing me saying, Tommy, I never really took much notice of you. I've watched this film, and now I've watched The Rape of Britain, and now I've watched Panodrama, and they started watching our other documentary, so I brought them to them. But the problem is, when I was in jail, remember, I got 18 months for playing the film. I'm a journalist. It's my fucking job. No one's argued about anything being wrong in the film. The argument is you showed the public the film. Yeah, I did, and I'm glad I did. Yeah, I'm glad I did. But then when I was in jail, they then notified me, because the film was on X, and they gave me the option. When I went to court, they said, delete the film and we reduce your sentence. This is when I was in court. I'm not deleting the film. It's not getting deleted. Yeah? Staying up. So send me to jail. I'll go to jail. I'll come out of jail. Then about 4 weeks before I was due to come out of jail, the Attorney General gives my solicitor the notification. If the film's still up when I walk out of jail, I go straight back to prison. No jury. So I didn't have a jury for this. It just goes to a judge. Contempt of court is the only crime that you can get a 2-year prison sentence without a jury. I've been done 3 times on it. I've been done 3 times. So then my team on the outside, it became made public that I would be indefinitely prisoned. Indefinitely. Because it would be a breach every time. If the film stays up, it's a breach. So the minute I walk out of jail, I'm in breach, straight back to jail. If I'd done it again, I'd wait 2 years, straight back in jail. So I was forced as a journalist or my teamwork to delete the video, or I would have had an indefinite prison sentence making a documentary in Britain. That was 2025.
Yeah. And this doco, guys, for you see it, like Tommy literally gets on camera the bribing that went on with the school teachers who told the other side of that story that the media never picked up, and literally got on camera that they were paid by these council leaders to hush. Muslim council leaders paid them not to say anything about the other side of the story, and this poor British kid was villainized, and not just villainized by the media, but by celebrities and by Piers Morgan and all these major people in the media just jumped on this bandwagon. This kid and his family had just got completely destroyed. And when you find out what that English boy did, any Australian parent of any nationality would say, if that happened to you, son, if somebody said the things that this boy did about on the other side of the argument about your sister, you should do the same. And the problem
is, when you watch it, what else are they lying to us about?
Yeah,
because they didn't just lie; they 360'd the whole story, and then it's the lengths they went to control the narrative. They went to massive lengths, spending £250,000, silencing everyone, scaring everyone, prosecuting me, putting me through the courts, allowing threats to murder my family, allowing attacks against my property. My mum's house was smashed up. No arrests were made. They identified the people that were making the threats. No arrests were made. So the police literally have stood down. They're not there to protect you. They stood down. So it's the coordination and the lengths they went to that is really like the wake-up call. But again, it's given us a platform. We're sat here now, Adam, talking probably because you watched that film. So
100%. I watched you on PBD with Patrick Bet-David. Then I watched the film, and then I was like, "Holy shit! How have I not seen this prior to now?" And it's just, I think as Australians, every Australian needs to watch it, not to be just to be aware of how the world actually works. Australia is so far away; it's a little bubble, and when you get out of that bubble and you start to realise what's happening in the big bad world out there, we have to be proactive in protecting, Australian life, Australian culture. And the UK is just a very, very near. And we're seeing it now, with this terrible conflict in the Middle East. And we're seeing, sadly, 60 Minutes in Australia just did a story saying how, okay, pro-Palestine protests are one thing, but what's happening is that the extremists are using fronts to, attract people around that issue and then radicalize them into something much more sinister. And it's the oldest play.
We have Iranian proxy armies in every Western nation.
Yeah.
They're the ones funding it. They're the ones controlling it. They're the ones supporting it. Iranian money.
We're putting the link to that story in this description for you to watch the 60-minute stories, because I know Australians will relate to it, and it's a 60-minute story revealing how the sinister side of this comes about, and well-meaning people just don't realise what's going on, and they jump on a narrative without really understanding the deeper.
Have you watched the 60 Minutes piece they done on the English Defence League in 2010?
I haven't.
It's good. Watch it. It was fair. It was fair.
Was it? Yeah.
It was fair. They come and met me. It was very fair. It was fun. Yeah, it was fair. They were very. In fact, compared to the British journalists, they were fair. They told our story. They showed who we were. Yeah, it was fair.
What I found, Tommy, just as an outsider looking at you, like, I really love how transparent you are. You were like a real life Green Street hooligan dude when you were younger, but I can see in studying your career where the lights came on about this thing is far more powerful than mobs of men. And you can see now you're actually a very sophisticated journalist. And I think a lot of your haters would like to dismiss you as just a racist. And this is what happens, right? They create labels that people become afraid of, and they don't want to be labeled as anything. But what that leads to is destruction of so much value in society.
Doesn't work anymore. They've played their cards too much. Does not work. I can tell you, on the 13th of September, Adam, I don't know if you're coming to London or not, We are going to have the biggest patriotic rally and free speech festival Europe has ever seen. I mean, it's going to, on the numbers that come are going to shock they're going to shock the establishment. They're going to shock them that we control ourselves now. We are family-friendly events. They're beautiful events. They're a moment. Do you know, I don't know if it's happening in Australia like it is here. We've been made to feel ashamed of who we are. We haven't been able to celebrate our identity or our culture. We've been under immense attack. An attack that is focused on the family, an attack that is focused on masculinity, an attack that is supposed to break us down. Now, what we've seen in the UK, and that's why I think London, the whole world should be watching London on 13th September, because we're going to stick our two fingers straight back up at that establishment and say, we are coming together. We are mobilising. I've matured, yeah? I'm a very different man to 20 when I was 25. I'm now 42. As you said, I don't want to blow my own trumpet. I'm a brilliant journalist. I investigate. And if it doesn't fit my narrative, I've done one story called The Phantom Gang, where I went to look for this Muslim gang who had been raping a girl. And I found out very quickly the girl was lying. And then I was the one that told the story to clear the lad's name. I become very good friends, actually, with the lad's name was Mo. I've become good friends with him because I felt broken for the man and his family because of false accusations that were being labelled against him. And although it would have fitted my narrative, the easy thing for me to do would have been to jump on the bandwagon against him. But the truth is the most important issue, and the truth is the most important point. And that's why a lot of the people who watch my journalism trust me in what I'm saying. So if I make a video, they trust what I'm saying. They believe in what I'm saying. The level of distrust now in British media is at an all-time high. No one trusts them. The thing is, it's like they don't realise. It's like they've got a terminal illness. They're dying and they don't even realise it. No one cares about what you say anymore. You want to call me a racist? No one gives a shit. We don't care. No, the public don't care. And I see the reaction I now receive everywhere I go. And I can see there has been a mass awakening. And it's now coming from, I just said I was in Fulham yesterday, a really posh area of London. And I had a woman just like, oh my God, I've cancelled my holiday with my husband. We're coming on September. The normal people, I went out with my mum, just tables full of women. We're all coming, Tommy. We're all coming. Britain is a breaking point. I believe there's a political revolution growing right now. And I want to play my role in it. And it must hurt the establishment. It must hurt the media to know that all the money they've had, everything they've had to try and discredit, slander and destroy us. And right now, just coming out of prison after 7-month sentence, we are stronger than ever before. We have a louder voice than ever before. And people are listening. People are fed up. You know, the other thing, our movement, we welcome everyone. I want to unify this country. I want to unify everyone against the establishment, against Islamic takeover of this country, against the demographic replacement. And as I said, September 13th, anyone who's watching.
Tommy, is this, I mean, I've got 10 years on you, and I know at 51, I've grown up as well, and you're going to grow more going forward. Do you have political ambition or not? Because I could see you doing that job.
Yeah, I did. I would rather, I think my skill is in my journalism, and my skill is in waking people up and making them think and changing their minds. I've never wanted to, and I've said this multiple times because there was an issue, and Nigel Farage kept saying, Tommy Robinson, we don't want him to join Reform. I was like, I'm not asked to join Reform. What are you talking about? I want to be part of a cultural movement, and I want to wake people up and bring them together. I want to give them a sense of identity, and I want to direct them and educate them and highlight issues. You can do the politics. Other people, I now look at, there's a new party now, because unfortunately Nigel Farage has made comments about we have to prepare for the Islamic demographic by 2050. We have to make peace with Islam. We cannot alienate Islam. It's like he's already holding up the white flag because the demographic statistics show the power that Islam will be. From my point of view, we have to do everything we can to stop that. We can't let it get to that point. I'm not ready to wave a white flag. There's 1,000 years of English Christian history in this country. We're not giving it away in 60 years because we're cowards. You might be willing to do that. We're not. The British public, every real red-blooded male in this country, ain't going to let that happen. We're awake. We might have been asleep. There's the lines are awakening in Britain. Trust me. Yeah, and everyone's going to see that. And Nigel will have to cotton onto that as well. Nigel seems to be preparing to surrender. We're not going to do that. I think a political force is going to be needed. There's a new party now called Advance. A gentleman called Ben Habib, who's formed. I look at them and see that Nigel sits there comfortably at a minute. The whole country's fed up with the uni party, with Labour and Conservatives. In steps Nigel Farage. He's not bothered about demographic replacement, said he's not going to do mass deportations, but this country's primed for a political revolution. The populist movement in this country want mass deportations. Mass deportations weren't even being spoke about 2 years ago. Look at it now. Everyone's talking about it. The Overton window has shifted so far, so quick. And I always remember saying, that swing that's coming from left to right, it's going to be unstoppable. When you know all the people, I used to have people, Islam, they'd whisper, yeah? People weren't comfortable talking about it. When that bubble bursts, yeah, and all those people who have been silenced and scared to talk, when they realise the floodgates open and everyone's now speaking their mind openly, that is the answer to this, is the most free speech we've ever had. We need to speak openly, and when that happens and the celebrities start jumping ship, which they already are, the commentators, people are now coming on board. The amount, this was a lonely place, Adam, 10 years ago. No one was talking.
100%, 100%.
Look at it now. It's not lonely anymore.
Tommy, you're describing Australia. I mean, I know I get DMs every day from Australians that there's this silent majority, and you can just feel
Wait till
it.
that bubble bursts, mate. That bubble's going to burst. It's bursting right now in Britain. I'm telling you, you will look back. Everyone's going to look back in the next 24 months in this country and realise, shit, the bubble burst. The cat's out of the bag. You ain't putting it back in. We're awake. We're fed up. You're not replacing us. Okay? We're not going away. You thought Keir Starmer tried to put fear into the entire British public by locking people up, by locking me up, by locking Lucy Connolly up, a mother, 31 months, for a few comments on Facebook, for locking people up for nothing. That was meant to scare the public. We then held a demonstration a month after that, on the 26th of October, 200,000 people. These figures are unheard of in British nationalist movements. To put these many people on the streets, and as I said, I'm looking forward to September 13th. They ain't going to know what hit. And the thing that causes them the most worry is we're controlling ourselves. You're not going to decide who we are. We're not hooligans. Yeah, you're not painting us as hooligans. Yeah, we're young men, or we're men, and we're masculine, and we're not going to back down. We're not coming. The police are not our enemy. Yeah, we decide. We now bring a party atmosphere. I just tell people, bring your smiles and bring your flags, lads. We're coming to party. We're going to party in our capital city on September 13th. We're going to have a wonderful day. We've got gospel church bands. We've got singers coming over from Canada. We've got people coming from all over the world. Jordan Peterson is talking at our event. Again, we're now attracting mainstream heavyweights in free speech are coming to London. And they're coming because of the impeccable behaviour of our supporters in the last 3 demonstrations. This is not, if I thought the solution was to go and get angry on the streets, I don't think that's the solution. The solution is to win the hearts and minds of the British public. And we're winning the hearts and minds. We're winning them. The government have lost them.
Tommy, on that note, and the media has lost them. The media and the government, they've lost them. And I agree with you 100%. Tommy, I think that's a wonderful place to end the interview. Mate, we're sending you all of our best, it means jack shit, but we're sending you our best wishes and energy, mate, because, we need people to lead, and you're doing an amazing job. So I hope for all the listeners, this has got you shifted a little bit. Go to Tommy's, what was the website again, Tommy, for the videos, the films?
The videos are trfilms.co.uk. The books are trbooks.co.uk. And do you know what this movement is full of? Which is, we are the people. Yeah. What this movement is full of is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's what's needed, yeah? Citizen journalism. The mainstream media are the cancer. Every one of you, podcast hosts, citizen journalists, live streamers, are the cure. So anyone watching, support these podcasts in every way. You've got citizen journalists going out with their phone and reporting on the street. That's who you need to subscribe to. Cancel your other bullshit subscriptions to the mainstream news networks. They're bullshit. They're lying to you. It's propaganda. Get the citizen journalists. That's the answer. So,
and where should we? Is there anywhere they should follow you, Tommy? Like Instagram? Do you any of that? X? Is there anything?
You follow me on X? Yeah, at T Robinson New Era. And again, our X numbers are going through the roof. I think we're nearly at 1.4 million. I was still shut down. I've now got YouTube back. Official Tommy Robinson. I got that back when I got out of jail. I was deleted from YouTube. Now I've been giving it back.
Not surprised. Yeah.
That's the free speech ripple coming out of the Donald Trump establishment from the United States.
Incredible, isn't it?
The future belongs to us, everyone, and people like us.
Tommy, you're a legend. Thank you, mate, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. I enjoyed it. Yes. Hopefully get to London September 13th, Adam. Yeah.
If I can, I will. It's a short flight.
Press pass. What we do at our events is we create press passes for citizen journalists. The mainstream media can fuck off. You're not welcome, right?
Yeah.
We give them to the TikTokers, the YouTubers. We give them a key access. So if you come, you get access to all of our guest speakers, the Jordan Petersons, the Evers, the Dominic Shreskies, the politicians. We want them talking to the citizens, not talking to the media. Cheers,
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Bye.
Mate. Bye-bye.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.